Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very interesting episode of the cEDH cast. You may notice that it is not Ian, but I, Braden, here, welcoming you to the beginning of a very froggy episode. This week, Ian will not be on the cast. He's been eaten by the Gitrog monster, and we're going to have to figure out who can replace him. So our patron shout-out this week is Ulthar. Ulthar is a $1 tier patron. Thank you very much for being a patron. All of the patronage we get has been really helpful. We've been able to get really nice boom arms. We've been able to get really nice microphones. It's all helped keep the quality of the podcast very high recently, which is super appreciated. So thank you again, Ulthar, and thank you to all the other patrons. I think I have a couple good ideas for who might be a replacement for Ian, especially if we're going to be doing a Gitrog episode. The first is going to be the king of the frog and host of the Into the North podcast, Noobz, otherwise known as Lyndon. Hello, Noobz.
Hello. Happy to be here.
I think our next guest is going to be Bendinguy from the Gitrog server. Hello, Bendinguy.
Hello.
So before we jump into the Gitrog monster, we should probably get an idea of what the Gitrog monster actually does. So besides being a frog horror, Lyndon, can you explain to me what the abilities on the Gitrog monster are?
Okay, so the Gitrog monster is a frog horror that casts for 3, a green and a black. It's a 6/6 that has Death Touch, gives you an additional land drop every turn, but the most important piece of text on it is that whenever a land enters your graveyard from anywhere, you draw a card. Also, there's another relevant piece of text that is at the beginning of your upkeep, you need to sacrifice a land or sacrifice the Gitrog monster.
Now, that seems like a pretty powerful engine on the battlefield. Additional land drops, getting triggers from when your lands are getting sacrificed. Seems pretty powerful with your fetch lands. I'm pretty sure there's also a pretty well-known combo with the Gitrog monster. Would you mind just giving us a quick explanation?
Sure. So almost as soon as the Gitrog monster was printed, everyone in the cEDH community kind of figured out the thing to be doing, and that is getting Dakmor Salvage repeatedly put in the graveyard. And so the easiest way to do that is to have a discard outlet. And the reason why you want to be putting Dakmor Salvage into the graveyard over and over again is because it has Dredge and it's a land. So you can discard it, generate a draw trigger with Gitrog, and then dredge it back into your hand. And then if you mill any lands with your dredge, then you get additional draw triggers. So you can use that to accumulate draw triggers, draw your deck, get Eldrazi Titans going in there to shuffle cards back in, loop spells, and just do whatever your imagination desires, basically.
That seems pretty powerful. Bendinguy, how often does that combo usually go off, and when in the game are you typically going for that?
Usually we start trying to go for the combo as early as possible. I play pretty aggressively, and going off as early as like turn 2 and 3 is not uncommon.
I would say it's not uncommon, but you're not going to be averaging like a turn 2 to 3 like goldfish every time. Like being able to cast, Gitrog on turn 3 is kind of what the deck is built to do very reliably, and that doesn't always include a combo. So like being able to win on turn 4 and stuff is that's when we're really hitting that point of inevitability. But we can get those crazy fast wins.
Now that we have a little bit of an explanation for how the Gitrog monster works and what the combos are there any specific reasons that someone should pick up the Gitrog monster for competitive EDH?
Yes. I think the number one reason people tend to pick up the deck is the complexity of just how it works. I know that's how I started. I'm pretty sure that's how Lyndon started as well.
Yeah, I was very much drawn to the intricacies of the loop. Now, I will point out one common misconception about Gitrog is that the combo itself is not actually, it's just an A plus B combo. It's Gitrog, Dakmor Salvage, and Discard Outlet. So like one of the pieces is already in the command zone, and so it's just Discard Outlet and Dakmor. And the base combo itself is not all that complicated. So the real complexity is derived from specific board states, how to react or how to play around certain things, or what happens if certain pieces get exiled. That's where the complexity really comes into play. But don't be intimidated by the Gitrog monster. Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward.
I will say, I think the Gitrog monster is the deck that is most commonly misunderstood by players in terms of its complexity. Shivam Bhatt played it was his first cEDH deck he played back at GP Vegas about a year ago, And I've actually handed the deck to a lot of people who are newer to the format. As long as your playgroup is friendly and is willing to accept that sometimes you have to explain the lines to people who are newer to the deck when they might not see them, I think the deck is really fun for newer players to have, especially since you can pressure such early wins.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think, one of the reasons that people should be playing Gitrog, and that's the fact that I think the fact that it can produce fast combos is not necessarily something that differentiates it from other cEDH decks. That's kind of like the standard now, especially with Fastest Oracle Demonic Consultation. That's an A plus B combo that only requires blue, blue, black. Food Chain can combo off very, very early, and that's like a 1-card combo with Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation. So the meta is fast, and that's kind of the minimum bar to entry for Gitrog being a non-blue deck, is it needs to be able to be fast. But what really sets it apart from other decks is how resilient it is against hate pieces. Very, very few hate pieces actually hinder Gitrog, either preventing it from winning or by doing what I'm going to talk about here, which is its ability to grind and generate insane amounts of value. So not many stacks pieces can both hit the prevent it from winning and stop its ability to grind. The really only one is Rest in Peace, and that is kind of gone now that Flash Hulk is gone.
I remember playing Gitrog Monster and having a Grafdigger's Cage in my deck. I don't know if that was correct, but I don't think I ever was punished for playing it.
Oh yeah, that was certainly the correct move. It was in a lot of the standard lists during Flash Winter.
Yeah, it's been a staple for the last year and a half.
And we have a couple more points here about why someone should check out the Gitrog Monster in cEDH.
It is a very commander-centric strategy, so anyone who enjoys playing with their commander as the main engine for the game is going to enjoy this deck.
Gitrog is certainly one of the better commander-centric decks you can pick. Usually floats around, tier 1, 1.5, along with likes of Urza and a lot of other not Thrasios Tymna decks.
Yeah, it's in the very popular club of 5 mana to 6 mana commanders that are huge mana drain targets.
Oh god, and Gilded Drake targets.
Yes, sadly.
Yeah, actually, speaking of Gilded Drake and commander centric and being a commander centric deck, I think we're actually one of the few decks that main decks Homeward Path, which is kind of an interesting thing to consider, considering how frequent Gilded Drake comes up and how many decks are commander reliant but don't actually require their commander so much as part of the combo that they need Homeward Path. Yeah, just food for thought.
The last reason we have marked down here for why someone should play Gitrog in cEDH is that it's so budget friendly. I actually built the $50 budget Gitrog deck at one point, and I actually upgraded it to almost the complete list outside of Bazaar of Baghdad. Lyndon, would you like to talk a little bit about the budget options for the Gitrog Monster?
Sure. So, funnily enough, the two people you have on in terms for Gitrog experts, probably not the best to talk about the budget aspects of the deck. I play 100% list. Andrew Bendinguy plays not 100%, but very close to it, and we don't dabble too much in budget Gitrog because we don't have to, and I guess we don't really want to. I want to give a shout out to Forge from the Gitrog server, who's put a lot of work into the budget aspects of Gitrog, and I think he has a $50, $100, $200, $500, a massive amount of resources for anyone who wants to go check out the budget friendly version of Gitrog. But to just kind of sum it up, your core combo is actually the discard outlets. Very, very cheap. Dakmor, very cheap. And the Titans, you only really need one if you're trying to build a budget version, and that will run you $30. But, it's really the rest of the deck where you're going to spend money and on tutors and whatnot. But the core of the deck, there's a fair amount of redundancy, and there's even some budget tutors that you can make use of. So you can get a pretty effective Gitrog deck for very cheap. And then even if you're going to the top end, Bazaar of Baghdad, Chains of Mephistopheles, you don't need those cards to have a functional Gitrog deck, or even close to 100%. The 99% with no Bazaar, no Chains is almost identical to the 100% list. So
I will say, if you're gonna like build a budget Gitrog deck, I found that the Bayou was incredibly important. I got screwed so many times just because there's a lack of tutorable duels. So if you were going to, I played $50 budget Gitrog. Like, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun playing the list. It was during a period of time where there were a lot of new players at my LGS, and so playing a budget deck kind of was a way to self-correct for certain advantages I had.
the one thing I personally would miss going to a budget deck is losing the fetch lands.
Yes.
Those are such a core part of what makes Gitrog strong. It gives, access to your creature tutors having a Ramunap excavator in your deck. So your creature tutors are able to assemble a ramp/card advantage engine. They allow you to turn top deck tutors into like just straight to hand tutors right away. With crop rotation, you can basically crop rotate into a fetch land and basically have an ancestral recall. So the fetch lands really tie everything together in terms of taking advantage of Gitrog as a value engine. Because if it's just a quote unquote Phyrexian Arena with his upkeep trigger, it's not very good. That's the biggest level up in my opinion. Is getting the fetch lands and life from the loam and all those crazy synergies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Enable.
So we've covered some of the reasons someone might choose to play Gitrog. Are there any reasons someone might not choose Gitrog?
The biggest one recently is a card called Draneth Magistrate.
Ooh.
It's
Boo. Yeah.
Comes down turn 1, turn 2, any game where someone has it in their hand, and then you suddenly need an extra combo piece.
In the form of Fatal Push?
Yeah. We started running Fatal Push because Draneth Magistrate got printed.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that's where we're gonna stop. Like I'm also considering like Dismember or Slaughter Pact or other pieces of removal to answer Draneth. I haven't been able to play too much into the Draneth meta, so I don't know how bad it is. But from what I've heard from people who have, and just from my gut feeling is that you're going to be seeing 2 to 3 Draneth decks in every pod, which makes the odds of it coming down early quite high. And the fact that our commander is 5 CMC, and most of the time we're not going to cast it until turn 3, leaves us in a very tough spot, especially since we rely so heavily on our commander as a value engine as well, even if we're not comboing. Digging to the actual cards that we want to hit to remove Draneth and assemble our combo is...
Are there any other reasons you might choose not to play Gitrog?
I think this is a pretty obvious reason, when you say it out loud, and that's that it's not blue. Not being in blue in cEDH is pretty rough. Your commander has to be doing something quite exceptional to even just hold its own in without having access to blue, because you don't have Force of Will, you don't have all those great counter spells to back up your combo or to prevent your opponents from comboing, and you don't have access to the best win condition in the game right now, which is Consultation Thoracle. So the worst thing about Thassa's Oracle printing is that Gitrog as a Golgari deck effectively interact with it. Now, this didn't used to be the case when Laboratory Maniac and Jace were around, right? You have Assassin's Trophy, Abrupt Decay, and those were always, fun to Abrupt Decay Laboratory Maniacs. But with Thassa's Oracle, those don't do anything. And so we're really kind of relegated to racing them or relying on our competitors / pod mates to answer the console players.
That makes a lot of sense. Is Torpor Orb just nowhere near useful enough?
Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, I had a feeling, but it seems like your only option.
The best way to answer it is our hand attack. We've got Thoughtseize, and with Thoracle, we've typically been on a core of Thoughtseize and Duress, with Inquisition of Kozilek as a flex slot if people wanted. But this has been, with Thassa's Oracle printing, we've considered moving away from Duress and back to Inquisition as a way to have some answer for Thassa's Oracle Consultation, even though it's not great. Launching a single target hand attack at the console player, or one of the multiple console players, and hoping that you can snag a piece, that's a very rough spot to be in.
It's pretty feels bad, especially if you're not using it to get rid of a piece of interaction for when you try to go off. Mm-hmm. So Bendin, is there any more reasons why you think someone would choose not to play Gitrog?
Yeah, so the last reason that we have is if you don't enjoy explaining out long combo steps, you won't like winning with this deck, because our combos take some time to get people used to.
I remember when I first played Gitrog, my co-hosts of the Into North podcast, Morgan, aka Spleenface, and Matt, aka Null, would test me all the time when I first was playing the deck. I would assemble Dakmor, discard out like Gitrog, and start executing the combo. Or my first instinct was to say, okay, I've got assembled the combo. Do I win? And they'd be like, nope. Play it out. So until you've proven yourself to a lot of players, they're going to make you play it out. So if that's not something you enjoy, or at least not something you're comfortable doing, this might not be the deck for you.
One thing I will say is that I think if you're playing the Gitrog monster and you're the newest player at the table, or in your meta, I think you do get a sort of that happens less often, because the people you're playing against will probably have helped you choose the deck you're playing.
Good point.
And they'll actually see that you're going for the line. They might ask you, like, what's your plan from here? And then if you give the answer they're looking for, they'll be like, all right, yeah, you got there. And then that'll be a great experience. That'll be a great, like, growing moment as part of your process towards, growing towards a skilled cEDH player. So our next topic, which is, what are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions about the deck?
Okay, well, as someone who's I guess it should be said, we're both moderators on the Gitrog server. And for those of you who might not know, the Gitrog server is the biggest of the deck-specific servers, and it's very active, and we get a lot of new players. So we see these misconceptions and mistakes a lot. So this is kind of like a great opportunity for us to put it out there. And so the first one we see all the time, and that's that Gitrog is a lands deck, or Gitrog is a dredge deck. No, it is neither of those. Yes, we run cards with dredge. Yes, we run lands, and we run some cards. Yes, we combo with lands, and yes, we run some cards with land synergies, but we're not your typical lands deck like you might see in casual EDH, and we're certainly nothing close to a dredge deck like you would see in Modern or Legacy. Those decks are very focused on using dredge every turn and using their graveyard as an additional hand. In our deck, dredge really functions as a way to generate an additional draw trigger. So let's say it's a Golgari Grave Troll. You're dredging Golgari Grave Troll, putting some cards into your graveyard, and then hopefully you're hitting a land to generate another draw trigger. And then you can discard Golgari Grave Troll to act as like a pseudo Dakmor Salvage until you eventually find Dakmor Salvage. So you're not you're never going, if you have a Golgari Grave Troll in your graveyard during your upkeep, you almost never want to dredge it. Like immediately, like just to put 5 cards into your hand, because Golgari Grave Troll does nothing as a card in your hand on its own, and you're just, if you're binning Vampiric Tutor or some other important value pieces, that doesn't progress your game plan at all. So dredge is a tool that we use to combo, and that's about it. The only value dredge card in our deck is Life from the Loam, and I guess that kind of falls into both camps of being a lands card as well, but that's more of a special case, and I wouldn't call that the cornerstone of the deck, and that doesn't define the identity of the deck. And just to cover it being not being a lands deck, in casual EDH you'll see a lot of things like Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, Cabal Coffers, Urborg, these kinds of cards. Now in our deck, the lands are all functional and pushing us towards our primary game plan, which is to combo. Fundamentally, we are a combo deck, and we have a commander that has synergies that allow us to grind, and that interacts with lands, but we're not running a ton of land synergy cards. So something that people will often do, or new players, is they'll run Crucible of Worlds as a redundant copy of Ramunap Excavator. We don't really need that. We've got plenty of ways to find Ramunap Excavator, and that's not our primary game plan. So we don't want redundant copies of that. We don't run Sylvan Scrying. We don't run Realms Uncharted. What else don't we run?
A common one I see a lot from newer players coming from more casual decks is Splendid Reclamation.
That's a good one. Also, Strip Mine and Wasteland. Those are common cards that you see in casual lands decks where they're trying to do like Strip Mine, Crucible Lock. Not us. That's not really advantageous for us. What we want is, we use Ramunap Excavator as a way to draw cards and to ramp us. All of our land synergies are ramp, or they're very like niche, like Homeward Path or Cavern of Souls or something like that to progress our game plan. So, yes.
All right. So our next misconception is that there's a tendency for newer Gitrog players to prefer to have dedicated win cons in the deck. So Tormented Hailfire or Ebony Charm are both commonly seen as a dedicated win con. Can you explain why that might be a mistake?
Yeah, so while these cards do end the game, cards that we already run for value purposes can accomplish ending the game just the same. So like, we can win the game outright with our existing pieces, and we can also lock the game out so efficiently that nobody's going to be able to execute any of their game plans. We run Deathrite Shaman, Finale of Devastation, both of which we can use to win the game, and we are already running both of those cards. Deathrite Shaman was in the list from when it became a deck. Finale was in the list from the moment it was printed.
Yeah, and we run these cards because they're good. We run Deathrite Shaman, obviously a fantastic mana dork, and Finale a great tutor for discard outlets or just, whatever value piece or we want. These are cards we are already running that also happen to serve a purpose that allows us to win the game without requiring dedicated win con cards. Like Andrew said, Torment of Hailfire, Ebony Charm are the most common ones. So just to talk about it briefly, Finale of Devastation, when you pay X is 10, it gives all your things haste and plus X. So you can, if you're comboing off pre-combat, you cast an arbitrarily large Finale of Devastation. You can dump your hand, all the creatures from your deck into play, cast Finale for X is a million, and then swing in and kill through combat damage. But after combat, Andrew, do you want to talk about the Finale Deathrite Shaman interaction?
Sure. One other thing with swinging in with Finale, we usually destroy all opposing permanents as well, just to make sure the way is clear and nobody can interact or anything. And then we also have an instant speed loop that we can do using Emergence Zone, Finale, and Deathrite Shaman. Basically, you can do the same thing. You cast Deathrite Shaman, and then if you cast Finale for X is 10, Deathrite Shaman will gain haste, and then you can then discard an instant or sorcery and activate Deathrite Shaman to make each opponent lose 2 life. We run something like 30-ish instants and sorceries in the deck, and you can use opponents' instants and sorceries as well.
Yeah, so not completely, not infinite, but not many cEDH decks are on the life gain plan, so pretty good most of the time. Also noteworthy, this is mainly used, so as Andrew pointed out, it's like with Emergent Zone, it's an instant speed combo, so you can do this if you're doing something during like the cleanup step where you can't cast things at sorcery speed. You don't really need Emergent Zone if you're just going to do Finale and Deathrite Shaman post-combat, where attacking with creatures is no longer, with arbitrarily large creatures is no longer an option with Finale of Devastation. It should also be mentioned that you have to sacrifice Deathrite Shaman every time, in case that wasn't obvious to the listeners. And there's like Culling the Weak or Abrupt Decay, things you can do to remove the Deathrite Shaman. There's also a crazy amount of redundancy in these things. So, instead of doing Finale of Devastation pre-combat, let's say your Finale of Devastation is exiled, you can put an Oblivion Crown on some creatures that you haven't played that aren't summoning sick. So let's say you have a Birds of Paradise, you can put an Oblivion Crown on it, discard, loop through a bunch of Titans or discard a bunch of cards and make it arbitrarily large. Then you can destroy the Oblivion Crown and move it on to something else, and so you can pump up your entire team that way, although notably not giving things haste. The win cons in this deck, we have some very straightforward ones, but because the actual win engine allows you to loop whatever you want in the deck, basically the possibilities are endless, but very, very, very large. The intricacies of the deck become apparent when people start exiling cards or things get exiled, and we're gonna be talking more about things that might cause those scenarios to pop up in the next point.
You might not even need to pump your team. If you have Assassin's Trophy, all you need is looping Thoughtseize to strip everyone's hands, make sure they can't interact, and then you can just slowly kill everyone with commander damage.
Hey guys, I actually just escaped from the mouth of the Gitrog monster. Just in time to tell you that there's actually an ad for this week's episode. So, oh god, here it comes. Our sponsor for this week is the indie webcomic Starcrossers.
In a universe at war, two soldiers adrift in the endless sea of space collide. Can they find love crossing the stars together, or will a horrible realization tear them apart?
Starcrossers is a sci-fi romance webcomic written and illustrated by Michael Tortora for the Webtoon Short Story Contest. He's also the artist behind our logo. The first 2 episodes out of 5 are up right now, and you can check them out in the link down below.
Mike is a brilliant graphic artist, and this work is really a passion project of his, and I really think it actually has a really nice story. So feel free to go check it out. Make sure to like and subscribe the comic if you really enjoy it.
I don't usually enjoy webcomics, but I do like space and stuff. And I actually am probably going to keep reading this, to be honest, which seems a little out of character. But I'm pretty hyped to find out what happens.
All right, everyone, back to the podcast.
So our last topic for the podcast is going to be Double Titan versus Gaius Blessing builds. Would you mind going to the specifics of what the differences are and why there might be such a amount of contention over these builds?
Sure. I just want to, pat myself on the back here and, just completely destroy any illusions that I'm humble. Double Titan is my baby, and it's not even like, it's like 4 cards different from a standard Gaius Blessing build, and that's the kind of thing that happens when, Gitrog and cEDH decks in general become very tuned. It becomes worthy of discussion to talk about. 4 card changes is like all of a sudden revolutionary. It's a revolutionary idea depending on the cards and the idea you're going for. If you're just changing flex slots, not really worthy of a new build, but Double Titan versus Gaius Blessing. So standard Gitrog builds for a long time would always be on 2 shuffle effects. So 1 Titan, Eldrazi Titan for the loop, because you can discard it from your hand and still trigger a shuffle. And then they would run Gaius Blessing as a way to protect your combo from like single target exile or one-shot Grave Hate exile. So let's say you discard Dakmor Salvage, you've got discard Outlet and Gitrog in play. Discarding it, dredging through your deck. Oh, and then all of a sudden you hit your Eldrazi Titan. Now, if you don't have another shuffler, they can just activate Deathrite Shaman to exile your Eldrazi Titan, and then all of a sudden your combo is dead. And, Deathrite Shaman being a very common card that people run, not to specifically hate out decks, but just because it's a very good mana dork, that's probably not something you want to have happen. So they included Gaius Blessing as a way to protect your combo. They'd activate their Deathrite Shaman with the Eldrazi Titan shuffle trigger on the stack, and then you would, in response, continue dredging until you hit Gaius Blessing, which has a effect where it is put from your library into the graveyard. You can, shuffle your entire graveyard into your library. So this shuffle ability goes on the stack, resolves, your Eldrazi Titan is now safely in the deck, and the Deathrite Shaman ability fizzles, and you can continue your combo. So that's the standard thing that Gitrog has been doing for a long time. Double Titan, it's like, okay, you just replace Gaius Blessing with a second Titan. Now, normally this is not something you'd want to do because Ad Nauseam is a card that's very strong, and damaging your Ad Nauseam curve for no reason, not great. But the reason why we want a second Titan is so that we could fit in cards like Tainted Pact and Plunge into Darkness, which have proven themselves to be very, very strong in almost every deck that runs them, notably like Food Chain and Console decks. Having basically 2 additional tutors was such a tempting proposition for me when I was coming up with the concept for the deck, or for this change, that I was like, okay, so what happens if I hit my Eldrazi Titan? You're going to have to, take that if you see it off Tainted Pact, or you're going to have to take that if you see it off Plunge, and then all of a sudden these cards that are almost like tutors just become, dead. So by including a second Titan, this gives us some form of redundancy and actually lets these cards, maybe not go to their fullest potential, but very close to that. So the whole thing between Double Titan versus Gaius Blessing builds is you're swapping out your Gaius Blessing for an additional Titan, and you're taking out some of the other weaker flex slots for Tainted Pact and Plunge into Darkness.
Now, what are the benefits to not playing this Double Titan build?
I would say the biggest one is not being on a Tainted Pact mana base. That means that your have access to typically one to 3 extra basics. So some people run 3 forests or 3 swamps. Some people run forests, so some combination, but more than the maximum allotment of 1 regular forest, 1 snow forest, 1 regular swamp, 1 snow swamp in Double Titan because of Tainted Pact. Now, this means that you have more fetch targets for if you have like a Ramen app in play. Also means you're able to play around back to basics and Blood Moon better. And then obviously the last benefit is not destroying your ad nos curve.
Yeah, so one more benefit is if you happen to be in the one meta in the world where Anafenza sees a lot of play, there are loops with Gaia's Blessing that allow you to just ignore the fact that she exiles creatures, which you cannot do when your shufflers are Eldrazi Titans. One final thing about Double Titan versus Gaia's Blessing is that we are potentially moving back to Gaia's Blessing, but keeping the Forbidden Tutors. I'm currently testing that. It's gone decently so far, but I have nowhere near the desired amount of games before I can say that it actually works for sure. So you make heavy use of the easy step loops because as concerned with exiling your Titan, and there are some loops that may or may not make it even more efficient that we will have out in the future.
Things are being worked on this front. As it stands, in my opinion, the whole Forbidden Blessing idea, it was basically the ultimate idea of when I first came up with the 60 easy steps. It was for Anafenza, but in the back of my mind it was how do we eventually transition back to Gaia's Blessing stuff from Double Titan. 60 steps with the amount of cards that were required, just impossible to justify. Now, with the constant evolution, from Forge and Bendinguy, we're getting closer and closer, and there are loops, I guess, cEDH cast exclusive. Listeners, any of you guys who are Gitrog fans and love the, all the stupid posts we make on Reddit about, crazy new loops, keep your eyes open because, sometime this summer, in all likelihood, we're going to be releasing some loops that we've been developing that aren't quite polished and ready yet, but would really, really allow us to exploit the advantages of the Forbidden Tutors in a Gaia's Blessing build.
I'm pretty excited to hear about that, and I'm also pretty excited that we got a sneak preview of what's coming up. Well, that has been a pretty exciting discussion about the Gitrog Monster. Is there anything else either of you would like to add about the Gitrog Monster before we close out?
Life from the Loam is a good card.
Tutor for it early.
It is the most
Hey, I like to hear that, because that card's
for both me and Noobz.
Entombing for Dakmor is almost never right unless you're going to win on the spot. Never entomb for Dakmor preemptively.
Do you ever
for Loam.
Do you ever Sylvan tutor for? I don't even know if you guys play that, but do you ever Worldly tutor for Golgari Grave Troll? Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
That's
very
something I used
often.
to do all the time. Yeah. Okay, then I'm not a bad Gitrog
Creature
player.
tutors are
Maybe.
Dakmor tutors in this deck.
All right.
I just wanted to say thanks for having us on, Braden.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Welcome.
Yeah, so one more thing is definitely check out the Gitrog server. We are very active. If you come in with questions, they will get answered pretty quickly. And
If you like memes, there's also a lot of memes.
Yeah, lots of people who don't even play the deck just chill on the Gitrog server because it's.
I feel
it's a
I feel
fun
personally
thing.
attacked.
several of Noobs' friends and a few of my friends are in the server, and they've never touched a Gitrog deck in their lives.
I'm just slowly building up that post count so I can apply for Top Frog, having only spoken about Paco for 8,000 messages about Paco in the Gitrog server.
God.
So, well, thanks to both of you. I really appreciate it coming on. You are a wealth of information about the Gitrog Monster and cEDH in general, so thank you so much. Thank you to all of our listeners for listening this far into the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to us yet on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you check that out. If you ring that little bell there, apparently it makes it so you actually get to see our videos when they come out, which is apparently a good thing. I've been told by Ian. So if you could do that, it'd be really appreciated. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for listening. Peace out. Bye.